Welcome to Olympian Water Testing, giving you the best in water analysis. Today we are looking at city and state New York. How much lead contaminated water does New York let students drink? That's something that we all have to be aware of because, as you can see, students are probably using that fountain on a daily basis, after class, after recreation. How much lead is in that fountain? What's going on? And it's actually not just NYCHA that struggles with potential lead poisoning. Schools across New York State may also have lead contamination at levels experts consider unsafe. And now activists are calling for tightening the lead regulation, strengthening the testing, and remediation rules. So that's all good stuff. Let's see what's going on here. As we can see, while reports of children being exposed to lead in New York City Housing Authority have generated negative headlines, schools across New York may also have lead contamination at levels experts consider unsafe. And that's one thing for it to be in the home and then find remediation there, but it's also bad if children are going to school and being exposed to lead. The environmental health advocates say New York State's current standard for lead contamination in public school drinking water is far too high and actually needs to be changed. The current action level, the threshold at which remediation must occur, is 15 parts per billion and was set in September 2016 when SB 2122 landmark legislation mandating all of New York's public schools drinking water be tested for lead, and lead gets into public school water through the corrosion of lead pipes and fixtures and tends to be especially prevalent in older cities and buildings constructed to 1986. And that's when the Safe Drinking Water Act came into play and started removing all of these lead pipes. That being said, they're still out there, and there can even be pipes that are lead free but still have a lead fixture even if they're mostly brass. So that doesn't solve the problem completely. Now, environmental advocacy organizations such as Natural Resource Defense Council and Children's Environmental Advocacy Group Healthy Schools Network are hoping New York will lower its action level to 1 part per billion before public schools begin testing for lead again in 2020. There is no safe level of lead in drinking water for kids. And that's one thing we really emphasize on this channel, that even though there's different requirements that say this amount of lead is bad or having a little bit less, there's no safe amount. And it's especially harmful to children. It's harmful to everybody, but children, it can be especially harmful for developmental issues and organ problems. So NRDC's Director of Urban Water Management, Joan Matthews, told City and State there just isn't, which they're correct. Lead is found in water due to the corrosion of older lead pipes or solder that connects pipes. In paint, soil, dust is a powerful neurotoxin. It can reduce a child's ability to learn and can also damage the central nervous system, kidneys, and blood, according to Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. More severe lead poisoning can lead to a coma, convulsions, and ultimately death, and the effects of lead are irreversible. So once it's there, it's there. That's why it's very important to go ahead and catch this, because if you don't catch this, then it could be too late. Also, the CDC and the WHO maintain that there's no safe level of lead for children. Children are especially susceptible to lead exposure due to hand-to-mouth activities like eating paint chips or playing on contaminated soil or drinking water, and their growing bodies tend to absorb more lead than adults, according to the CDC. Pregnant women and women of childbearing age are also encouraged to steer clear of lead, as it can affect unborn children. It's not just drinking water that exposes children to lead at school. Crumbling infrastructure and other problems are a considerable issue. Also, the NYCHA housing remains an issue for different schools, and that was reported in June. You can also see here, New York has a relatively strong lead law, but contaminants are still remaining. Although 43% of schools nationwide testing for lead in public school drinking water, New York is one of only 15 states that actually requires testing. And NRDC analyzed that, 2016, the lead results from the State Department of Health. And the New York City Department of Education, 2018, found 56% of schools across the state tested about 15 parts per billion, and the action level of 15% or more of their taps. So just because there is some good laws and some legislation and some restriction trying to stop some of this problem, it doesn't mean it's still not a problem. Even though the state level is taking a lot of action, there's still a lot of issues, and it can't always be solved by just writing a law. That's why it's always a good idea to periodically test your water for any amount of lead.